A miniature pig splashes around in a messy bowl of soup. A duck leads a wheelbarrow down a country lane. A woman gently strokes her daughter's face with a live rabbit in a dimly lit room. Journey into the brilliant and darkly funny imagination of artist Michael Sowa, where a menagerie of bizarre animals take on complex personae and pop up in the most unexpected places. Using rich textures and inventive techniques of paint and varnish, these pictures achieve the otherworldly look of a surrealist fairy tale, the Brothers Grimm gone awry. In a cross between The Far Side and Magritte, Sowa's arc showcases over 50 playfully macabre images that evoke the absurdity of language and of life. I bought this book back in early December, spotting it in a National Trust second-hand bookshop and finding something about the art both vaguely familiar and entirely unique. Leafing through the pages of the book, I was at once reminded of my parents' CD collection, and it was there that the source of that familiarity became known. Sowa's art had once graced the cover of a 1994 album by the Beautiful South. While the name of the artist had meant nothing to me at the time, the cover of the album, depicting 4 German shepherds in a rudderless boat at sea, was one that had often fascinated me in early childhood, the German shepherds likely reminding me of our own dog, Scrappy. Later, I learned that the band had initially used a different painting of Sowa's for the album's art, one depicting an auditorium of dogs listening to an old-fashioned gramophone on stage. But this had been withdrawn following complaints from EMI, who felt that the art directly mocked their famous His Master's Voice trademark. Despite later seeing Sowa's work in one of my favourite films, Jean-Pierre Jeunet's magical realist character study Amélie from 2001, still the name of the artist had failed to hold space in my immediate memory. Nonetheless, turning the pages on this Enchanted Bestiary of a book, I was continually struck by both the imagination of Sowa's work and his undeniable talent as an artist. In the technique, the craft, the level of artistic skill, his work is both reminiscent of artists like Edward Hopper, René Magritte, Johannes Vermeer, and other great painters of historical acclaim, but possessed of a distinct originality, a keen sense of humour, and an underlining sensitivity to the absurdities of modern life. Rather than simply appropriating a fine art style, or using artistic imitation to give weight to his own amusing still-life abstractions, Sowa's own talent as a fine artist serves an entirely unique and singular vision of the world. One where farm animals, cast adrift against a sea of angry waves, are afforded the same heroic reverence and quiet dignity as the posed figures of one of Caspar David Friedrich's great masterworks of German Romanticism, where a rabbit making the defeated commute, either to or from work, is rendered as a moment of contemplative still life more than equal to that of any of the haunted melancholic scenes of Edward Hopper, and where the image of a woman taking a pet moth for an early evening stroll around the neighbourhood once again recalls the influence of Magritte, but also the influence of Franz Kafka. Across each of the paintings collected in this 1996 publication, Sowa's Ark, the wit and imagination of the work is so great that it can be easy to overlook how skillful and detailed Sowa's art actually is. The use of light and shadow, the composition of scenes, the controlled colour palette, and the sense of space are all impeccable. Some of the paintings are more stylised, almost cartoonish, prioritising humour and the use of visual puns and the incongruity of the scenes depicted. Works like School of Fish, Laptop Sheep, Reckless Highway Pig and others are more works of humour than works of still life. However, other paintings, like We Want No Pigs in Doddenstead, Greetings from Berlin, The Rooster Goes on a Trip and Moving House, combine great humour with satirical commentary, understated pathos, and something more open to the viewer's interpretation. They're complete works of art, made more remarkable by their ability to combine humour with deeper sociological musing. In looking at these more detailed works, it's obvious that Sowa could have used his undeniable talents to produce blandly conventional works of contemporary still life. But in allowing his imagination to infuse his work, inviting animals to rebel against the laws of nature, and still finding something inherently human in their quirks and misadventures, he creates a startlingly original world where recognisable reality is transformed into something abstract, surreal, but still entirely relatable to the human condition. Looking at his paintings reminds me of the feeling I get from the films of David Lynch and Roy Andersson. With Lynch, his work shares a certain brooding nocturnal quality, where scenes of suburban surrealism contain moments of great, albeit dark humour, as well as a certain underlining sense of anxiety. One thinks of the famous rabbit scene from Inland Empire, or the deer scene from The Straight Story. Lynch often describes the pivotal scenes of his films as being like the eye of the duck, another instance of animal imagery being used to express the perception of something that is felt but difficult to explain. With Andersson, it's those long-held shots, the static tableau found in films like Songs from the Second Floor, You the Living, and A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence, where bleakly absurd scenarios of contemporary existence play out with both shrieking despair and ironic detachment. That Sowa's work so often feels directly satirical yet completely surreal, open to interpretation, yet almost beyond any rational interpretation, makes his aesthetic all the more remarkable. His paintings are filled with humour, almost to the point of parody, but they also afford their subjects genuine dignity, sensitivity, and a curiosity for the contradictions of the natural world. In contrast to the distinct unreality, his paintings present their subject with a mundane matter-of-factness, refusing to dehumanise, even when the figures depicted are animal, not human. There's a reminder here, perhaps, that if art can afford dignity, reverence, and quiet contemplation to cats, dogs, pigs, and sheep, what excuse do any of us have for not treating all living things with the same interest, curiosity, and respect?